Hey everyone. I'm traveling. I got classes coming up. I got all kinds of crazy break-in work and everything else under the sun. And I know I have not been revealing good quality videos, giving you the shorts, not giving you the good stuff. So here's the good stuff. Every now and then, kind of inspired by my buddy Ian, who reaches into the history books and breaks out an old video every so often. This is a great one. You've seen me talk about elevators with Howerd, right? This is one of our talks that we gave at this little con in North Carolina, down at Kakalaki Con, right? It's a good event. I recommend you check it out. This was like, it's kind of our elevator talk, but it's kind of not. We called it Elevator Obscura, and it's a lot of the weird industry hacks and crazy stuff that didn't fit in our mainstream elevator talks. It's still up on the Carolina Con YouTube channel, I think. It's got like 12 views or something like that. I don't know. But I thought some of you might dig it, so I'm posting it here. And I'm going to give something away. I don't know what I'm going to give away. Stay tuned to the very end, and I'll tell you. In the meantime, enjoy. Stay safe out there. All right. So Vic covered it. I'm a pen tester. He's an elevator guy. We met because this industry needs a little kick in the pants as far as security is concerned. And even though he is not here representing Payne Elevator, we are here representing the hacker community and a bunch of interesting ingenuity and fun things that you all can do. Speaking of fun things that you can and can't do, what should they try to do or not do?
Pretty much you shouldn't do anything. But our lawyers have required to mention that, of course, standard disclaimers apply. You're responsible for your own behavior, and we're telling you straight up most of these things are either prohibited by law or would put you at a great degree of risk of physical harm, or you could damage equipment, which would be financial harm. So carefully consider your actions before taking anything away from this talk.
Yeah, elevators in general are not going to kill you. Most elevator trips go without incident. Most people every year, the few that are actually injured or killed are basically people like him working on elevators. But yeah, you all, like, that, I mean, Howerd said it, but really pay attention. It's fun to F around with stuff, right? But you say there are various failure modes.
Yes, elevators can behave in ways that you don't necessarily expect, and as a result, things like this can happen. So here we have a leg in a gap between the car and a landing sill. That's about 1 inch wide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, y'all might think you're smart enough. You might say, look, we're not complete idiots. We're not going to die. We just want to play, right? Because that's very hackerish. Doesn't mean that you can't cause major damage if you don't know what you're doing. So just because you think you're smart enough not to kill yourself, it doesn't mean you're not facing like a felony criminal mischief, causing excess thousands of dollars. So like, we've all seen this on YouTube, right?
Never gets old though.
Right.
Have you guys seen this one? Penalty charge right there. So whenever state this happened in, it was like over $1,000 worth of damage. So it became a felony for this guy. So
yeah. So we're experts at this. You're not. Please believe us when we say you shouldn't try most of this stuff. Many of you may have seen this talk before or some version of this talk. We keep updating it and revising it. How many people have seen the beginnings of the elevator hacking talk, like at Hope or DEF CON? So a lot of you know some of the basics. We're not going to get into every little different kind of elevator system ever. Understand that at least there are two major varieties of elevator. There's overhead traction and there's hydraulic, which is usually pushing from below. But in each of those cases, the elevator itself, the box that you're standing in, the room, that little traveling room, does not contain most like motor drive power. The power source of motion is either way up in the penthouse or way down below in the pit. And the car you're in, mechanically, virtually all it has are things like rollers on the sides that just guide it along the rails and the hoist rail that stabilize its travel. But the actual power source is somewhere else. And you are just interacting with that system through a series of fixtures and panel technologies.
Right. So there's a variety of fixtures you're going to interact with. Most of the time, it just comes down to pushing buttons, and it's going to give you feedback in the form of illuminated indicators like you're seeing here. So all of those fixtures are tied back to some type of component in the machine room. So somewhere, whether it's a hydraulic elevator in the machine basement, or whether it's a traction elevator and it's in the penthouse, everything's going back to this motor room, and the controller, which you're going to see in a second, is making the decision to drive those motors. This is a very boring looking motor room. This is a hydraulic elevator. Not a whole heck of a lot going on. What you're seeing on the right is the controller, and that's actually driving with that hydraulic pump unit that's in the middle, and then you can see the hydraulic line actually running up and around and back into the hoistway. And you can see some buckets of oil, which we'll get into some of this stuff later.
Yeah. But everything you do to interact with this elevator, from any of the fixtures, hallway, cab, etc., you're talking to this. Howard, this is the controller, right?
Correct.
Now the controller unit, I mean, it's very much, like in hackers. It's, what's the kernel, man? It's the brain. Like this is the brains of the operation. It is in the motor room, and it is doing all the decisions.
The evolution of this comes primarily from relay logic controllers. So we've been talking about a lot of different types of elevators, but fundamentally the decision-making machine that is the controller was traditionally just a series of relays that were interconnected that would pull in or drop out depending on the state that the elevator existed in.
Yeah. Where it is positionally, who wants what demand, etc. And some of these are still in use.
There's a lot of them still in use.
Look at this. This is not in a museum somewhere.
This is in New York City. And it's operating, as you can see. So this is actually a type of Otis controller called the UAL. And you see that as relays are dropping in and picking out, other relays are dropping in and picking out. And there's a little bit of lag because it's old analog and all that fun stuff. What you're seeing here is the pie plate selector. It spins around as the elevator is moving up and down the hoistway and either makes or breaks contacts so that the elevator knows where it's located. So if you're going to 4, when the contact for 4 comes in, that's how the elevator knew that it was there, because something was making a physical contact, completing a circuit, and that was that.
And again, some of these systems, because it's expensive to totally tear out and put in a new elevator, some of these systems are still running to this day.
This was still running.
Look at this. Like, we're not trying to scare you. Elevators are very safe. Remember those first few slides? They're safe because there's not a lot that can go wrong with logic this basic, right? How many viruses existed in, like, OS2, right?
This actually was from an accident site, so. The controller was not involved, though. It was something else.
Yeah. But modern, so you saw the smaller panel that we opened up, the modern controller systems, they're all microcontroller, but they're all doing the same job. They're all taking user input, taking data input from where the elevator is positionally, and adding that up and saying, what do I need to drive this motor to do?
Yeah, you'll see PLCs too, but they're a lot less common.
So what other kinds of inputs are like the voice?
The most simple way, besides the pie plate selector, because that's obviously a little more mechanically complex, the most simple way for an elevator to know where it was to have roller switches like this, that when the elevator arrived, a little vane would push a spring-loaded switch and actually make or break a contact that was wired in the hoistway. What you're seeing here is not that, though. This is something called a limit switch that still exists on modern elevators. This is at the very top of the hoistway. There's also limit switches at the bottom of the hoistway. That's to indicate to the elevator it's approaching or it's at the end of its actual possible travel run. And if you hit that last switch right at the top there, that's the I'm fucked signal. And that means that you absolutely need an elevator guy to come out and fix it. That cab will not move. So
yeah, it's slow down limit 1, slow down 1, slow down 2.
There's 2 slowdowns. The third one's a normal limit. That will be pushed in when that elevator is level with the top floor. And then the final limit, which means there's nowhere else for that cab to go.
Yeah. But beyond that, beyond the top and the bottom, you have this in the middle of the hoistway, running through the hoistway, like a magnetic tape system, right?
Right, this one uses magnetic strips that are placed on that tape. The black tape that runs up and down in the picture next to the guide rails, that is a selector. The selector is picking up that magnetic input with a little reed switch, and as it's going down, it can tell, again, where it's located. The advantage to this, of course, is that since it's not an actual physical system that's moving back and forth, this is a lot less prone to fail. Right, because a mechanical switch will break after 100,000 repetitions, whatever. So these are a lot less likely to fail in that mode, but they can fail in other ways, which we'll talk about.
And the elevator cab should know, and the controller should know where the cab is traveling at any given time. Not just am I at a floor, but even in between floors. How fast am I going? What's the travel like? The elevator should know what it's doing at all times, and that's how it can tell whether to stop the motor, slow the motor down, whether to re-level if you're in a really crappy hydro. Have you ever been in an elevator that kind of like stopped and then you felt like a little tiny extra lurch, like a re-level? Yeah,
right.
Because it was drifting off the floor level.
Or if the load changes.
Oh yeah, you start loading 20 people in an elevator because you didn't want to wait for the next one, and it kind of like does that number, re-level. Yeah, the selector found, it was like, whoa, something's moving here. What if something moves really, really wrong, right? Elevators have safeties. Elevators for the longest time have had very interesting mechanisms that have prevented you from dying. Many people may know, if you're a history buff, the name, especially in this country, but a big name in elevators is what's the name you think of? Mr. Who? Otis. Otis did not invent the elevator, right? Otis did what to the elevator? He made it safe. He made brakes. He made mechanisms.
He didn't make brakes.
Right.
He made a specific type of brake.
He made a specific type of brake, right. He made a safe mechanism that would literally survive severing of the roping system. So here we see modern governors, and we see other safeties that'll work in up direction travel, that'll prevent overspeed. But the original Otis rail gripper safety was designed so that if there's positive pressure, if there's tension on the roping cable, the hoist cable, the safety's doing nothing, it's just kind of tucked in. But if that cable goes slack, for example, if the entire rope system breaks or the winch fails or who knows what, that mechanism under spring pressure will fire out and grip the rails. And this is a gentleman, actually clearly very much on British television, and I'm not saying that just because of his teeth, but because he's being raised way higher than you would let someone do a TV host in America, and just having a workman come on up and slice the line. And he's like, right, this is gonna work, right? And then sure enough, ka-chunk. And that's historically what Mr. Otis would do at these trade fairs and world fairs. He would hoist himself up, cut the rope, and everyone would scream, and then he'd say, it's all safe, everyone. It's this, Skylar knows history of engineering stuff like this, right? Yeah, so this is what has evolved into modern elevator braking systems and rope gripper systems and rail grippers. The idea of a governor roping center. A series, when we say ropes in the industry, we're not talking like hemp systems.
They used to be.
Yeah, it used to be.
That's what this was all
the modern cables, or as we say ropes, there's extra roping going on in the hoistway, traveling with the car. And if for any reason the car overspeeds, the governors will trip and yank on that rope, jamming into the brake mechanisms, which will just snug shoes into the rail, grab it.
Grip the rail and bring the car to a stop.
Exactly. So it's actually really hard to die in an elevator if you're not using it like a jackwagon. Like if you're just in the cab, the safest place to be is in the cab because the cab is not going to plummet and free fall. And even if something completely went wrong and literally the governor rope sheared, nothing grabs, you're just going down, there are buffers in the pit. The pit is designed to accept the full weight of the elevator at full normal travel speed, right?
Right.
And just crash into that buffer and survive, not even damage the elevator. You might twist an ankle, but the elevator is going to try to keep you alive. And these systems have evolved over the years in a lot of ways to make you be safe every day. Elevators want you to live, and we want you to live.
With that said, another disclaimer.
Yeah. One other disclaimer. They want you to live if you're in the cab, right? Now we're not I'm dating a girl from MIT and there's a lot of history in the hacker culture with elevators and things you shouldn't do. But you don't want to be these kids, right? You don't want to, seriously, we laugh at this bad TV.
This is actual surveillance footage.
We laugh at it, don't dick around with this shit.
Well, that part's accurate. There's a light on top of the car.
Yeah.
Right? Most motor rooms have lights.
So sure enough, riding on an elevator top is fun. You don't want that failure mode. And that's we laugh, and that's happened.
Yeah.
People have been killed by the counterweight. It's don't fuck around in the hoistway, people. We're telling you this for a reason.
I mean, even if it's not getting hit by the counterweight, there's obviously fall hazards, there's electrocution hazards, there's a million hazards. So that's why we need to just remind you that we're not responsible for you being stupid.
You'll see video of me being stupid later. So I was stupid, so you don't have to. So that being said, we say automatic mode, the elevator wants you to stay alive and will keep you alive. There are a lot of special modes of operation though, and we would love to share some of them with you if you're interested. Are you interested?
Yeah.
All right. Bang right off the bat. How many people do pen test work? If you are a pen tester like me and like many of us, you will probably play with independent service mode if you ever tinker with an elevator. There are key switches or even just flip switches behind locked panels. Independent service mode is far and away one of the most useful things you can do in an elevator if you want it to do things it's not supposed to do. Flipping to independent will take the elevator out of the group bank. It'll make it your private elevator. Now, in many like an apartment and stuff, they'll use independent if they have to move somebody in and they don't want that elevator going away and being used for other demand. But if you're a pen tester, everything including like go to the other floors I'm not supposed to go to, that will work. Don't open the doors, like that works. The elevator won't service hall calls. I've hidden in elevators for hours in a building, just sitting there waiting for everyone to go home because I snuck in, flipped to independent, waited forever, like I rolled a chair in there and just plugged my phone into the little GFCI outlet. And then at the end of the day, I like drive down to the lobby, let the team in, then I drive it up to the top floor that's restricted, let everyone out. Independent mode is super, super user time, really. Like, it's the good shit, man.
Most of the time. There are ways to configure elevators so that independent service won't override security. But 90% of the time it's going to.
Yeah. And that's kind of an outgrowth of an older style of service, right?
Right. So back in the day, historically, there used to be an attendant that was actually doing the job of the controller. They didn't have relay logic at a certain point. It was just a single speed AC motor or DC motor or whatever. And, they'd have a crank just like this, and they could go up or down at one speed. The innovation back then was we have 2 speeds now. All right. But what they would do is they would just, decide, okay, I have passengers waiting in the lobby. I'll be right back for you. They'd go drop off people and come back and pick them up. So attendant mode is sort of an offshoot of that, but on an automatic controller. What you can actually do is have the car still picking up people in the direction of travel and dropping people off in the direction of the travel, or even skip stops as you bypass those. But at a certain point, the attendant can make a decision. I need to reverse direction. I need to go the other way for some reason.
Yeah, this car's full. I can't take anyone else.
Right. Yeah. So it's a sort of semi-automatic attendant mode. The elevator's still making the leveling, it's still opening the doors, it's still doing the safety stuff, but the attendant is controlling the actual dispatching of the car.
Now, what if you want to give people in your building the ability to be prioritized like an attendant would, but you don't want to pay for an attendant? They have that too. They have like express and executive service, right?
Right. So these are usually variants of the exact same thing, which is just that some demand is priority over other demand. So in the case of express or executive service, what that means is that it's either going to bring a car that's kind of in the same direction, whatever's next, it's going to stop anyway. It's going to stop there and it's going to pick somebody important up and service their demand before it services other demand.
VIP.
Executive priority service is actually that it will reverse the direction of the closest car, regardless of what it was doing, and then tell everybody in the car, get the hell out. The CEO's here.
It's literally a voice announcement. It's like, boo, this car is needed for other services. Please exit at the next landing.
This relates also to hospital emergency mode, something you've probably also seen code blue, people call it, which we're going to cover. These are very closely related. We'll get to that in a second.
Now, yes, question back there. That's an incredible. So she said, why not be able to automatically cancel if you push the wrong floor?
Fujitech does this. Okay, you can cancel the call from the cab by pressing it a second time. The reason I think most controller manufacturers don't do that is because we're Americans, and we would trample each other to get to our destination a second faster. And therefore, people would get in the cab and just cancel each other's calls to get where they're going quicker. That's my hypothesis. So
yeah. So speaking of people who think they're more important than other people, there's like Sabbath mode. If you think that like the most important, not that Sabbath, like that Sabbath mode. If you saw like Bill Marston. Yeah, people who think that because of words on high, they're not allowed to do certain things on religious days. Sabbath mode is a mode that lets you use an elevator without touching any buttons. And how does it do this? Well, the elevator will go to the top floor of a building and then platform at every floor on the way down, opening its doors, letting you like mosey on or off on a really tall building like every other floor. But the idea is it makes people think that they're not actually pressing any switches or tripping any, you're totally tripping all kind of relay logic when this happens.
If you're observant, I apologize for breaking the bad news. You've probably been lied to. there are several circuits involved that you're interrupting, the flow of current, and it might just be ignored. The inputs might be ignored by the controller, but when you break that beam on the scanner edge on the door, you're still breaking that beam, and it still sees you there, and you're still, creating fire. The load in the car, you get on, the elevator has to either work harder or work less because of you. And my understanding is that is very much prohibited by the same rules that have led to this. So this is literally just bullshit.
Now, what's interesting though is this is the first example we're going to give in this talk of like hacks that the industry folk have made. So this wasn't initially like programmed into the elevator logic. There are situations where people made their own special relays, and then on the weekends they would have, some goyim come up there and be like, I can flip a switch, boom, and like turn on elevator service or like turn on Sabbath mode, and different logic would apply. And these sort of hacks in the industry eventually got programmed in when more and more like elevators went up in Yonkers and stuff, I guess.
Brooklyn.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Shut it down.
So this idea though of crafting your own, roll your own system, there's a lot of this in the industry. And you're going to see more examples of really smart things or really dumb things that people in the industry have done just to make something work a different way. And I find that fascinating. Something I really, really wish they would make work better than they do. There is something called load bypass. How many people have been in a crowded elevator and you're like, why is it stopping at all these floors trying to pick up calls when there's no room left in the elevator? I wish it would just go to the lobby.
How many people have
Yeah,
right, same hands, same hands.
Yeah. Well, how many people have been in an elevator that beeps when it's too heavy? Because you put too many, yes. The elevator can sense how much weight is in it most of the time. So the systems are programmed to be able to say how much load is in this car and either alert or alarm. You can configure that in the logic to say, this elevator is at 90% of its load capacity. It's on floor 17 and trying to make its way down. I'm not going to keep collecting all of this down demand right now. I'm just going to go to the lobby. Why this isn't enabled more? Hire more people like him in your building, and they'll program this shit.
It's always optional. I mean, that's not a standard feature on most elevators, but it's a useful feature. So.
Yeah. What's that? License key?
Yeah.
Is there a dongle? How about this? Is that patented?
I don't believe so. There are so many different methods of doing it. There's just a lot of different products. So even if there was a patent on one particular product, it's been done. So.
How many people have seen idiots in the elevator press all the buttons? Elevators can tell when somebody is fucking around with it. You're saying you pressed all the buttons. Elevators can tell that something is wrong. Like, there's not enough of us in this cab. There's not a lot of people. The scanner edge isn't breaking.
That's amazing. Keep recording. Great.
But we keep hitting enough buttons, the elevator's like, come on, don't tell me another one.
1, 2, 3, and boom, out. It's like they know we're here.
Yeah.
And it only drops some of them. What is going on?
So that's a light load in the
Sorry
elevator.
guys, we're actually trying to get where you're going.
Because they're like, you are 2 people.
And 8's
There's
not
no
even
reason
lit.
you need to go to 9 floors right now. Oh, this is
All right, now we're never gonna get out of here.
All right.
So we got a new one for you we didn't mention in Hope or DEF CON. A correction run is the mode the elevator will go into when its encoder and selector inputs start to differ. So when the motor's saying, I went X number of feet, and the selector is saying, well, I didn't go that many feet, the elevator might run itself in what's called a correction run. So instead of running at contract speed or high speed is what it's called, it'll run at inspection speed, which is usually like 1/10 of the original speed or less. And it'll go until it hits one of those limit switches we were talking about. Then it'll reverse direction, and it'll go and hit the other limit switch. And the whole time, it's looking at the encoder inputs, and it's learning the hoistway again. It's saying, okay, I've got 10 floors, and this is how far apart they are. So when it gets lost, it might be a situation like this, where you might be very well in the cab when this happens.
You might be like, what is going on with this elevator?
It would not be unheard of. If you are, and this happens, chances are the floor indicator will go out, you'll feel that you're going up, it'll eventually stop, you'll reverse direction, you'll feel that you're going, it'll eventually stop, and it'll open its doors and let you out. So if that ever happens, now you know.
Don't be scared. That's the elevator being
nothing
safe.
unsafe.
Yes. The consequences of getting out of sync.
It can create faults in the controller, the car can shut itself down, it can entrap passengers, but for the most part it's not really a safety issue so much as it is a passenger discomfort issue if someone was entrapped, or if someone had a medical problem while they're entrapped. That's
Yeah,
problem too.
you don't want to mislevel, you don't want to like keep, the worst case could possibly be like driving beyond.
Right.
Because the selector says, hey, I'm getting close, and the motor's like, I haven't turned that far. You don't want to be out of sync for that reason. Yes. The optical encoder? Oh, if it's like out of true?
It shouldn't, because whatever difference it would be should be, insignificant. The tape itself is going to be fixed. It's not part of the actual hoisting system. So, there sometimes is, yeah. Like the actual traction shift will have a motor encoder. But as far as changing, the rope stretches a little bit, you're saying when there's a load, and that's true and all. But we're talking about when they're way out of sync, it's going to fault out. It's going to try to relearn itself. Yeah.
Yes, in the back. Oh yeah, they said, do they have the ability to be overloaded? That was the NILOAD box up here. So yeah, there are various ways. That's just one. There's others that just measure the rope tension.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
a lot of times what it is just that when the rope comes down, attaches to the car's crosshead, it's actually, the rope is straight up and down. You can picture that. And there will be, something coming in like that, right? Two from one side, one in the middle. And then as the rope stretches, it's going to change that, whatever distance it is, very slightly. And so that's the most common method that they use. Yeah, it's usually either voice announcer or it'll say Right, load bypass is when it's like, oh, I'm 75% full, I can get the hell out of here. But you're also asking about when it's overloaded. Yeah, they can detect that as well.
So another mode that we haven't talked about before now that I just think is adorable, in Japan, someone mentioned Fujitech and the buttons, Japan has pet mode. And when we were trying to figure this out online, we saw an elevator panel with this button that says pets. And we're like, what is this? And Pinguino is like, I think that should be awesome if dogs can run the elevator. And it turns out that's not it. What it is if you're a guest and you have your puppy with you, you press pet mode and lights go on in the hall stations so that if anyone is like scared of dogs, like, oh, such pets, so afraid, they like won't get on the cab or something, or they'll like run away. I don't know what happens in Japan. But you don't see that. I would support this in America just because I like to play with puppies, but oh well. So that's like an obscure one. Yes, I would get on the elevator with like bacon.
Yeah,
give it to the dogs.
Either way, though.
Somebody tweeted this at us, right?
Yeah, this is interesting. I honestly don't know where this is from. I'm guessing it's from a parking garage that kind of has that zigzaggy type of shape. But it's not uncommon to see odd implementations like this. This is a Dover, by the way. We're going to get into how...
Dover Impulse, right?
It is Dover Impulse fixtures. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But yes, these are...
Yeah, I just like that they made a badge for the floors that says, hey, like somebody at the factory has this badge.
Yeah.
It's great. Really? Because the floors are tiny for the children? Is that how they do it? All right. One other thing that many people wish elevators had is peak performance and peak optimization. During the morning, and especially around check-in time at a hotel, are people mostly trying to go, during the morning you're trying to check out, right? So you're trying to go which way, up to your room or down to the lobby? What about at 2 and 3 in the afternoon when you can finally check into a hotel? Where are you trying to go? Everyone wants to go up. The elevators can be configured for peak performance, where they park and where they idle, waiting for the next call. Maybe in the morning, a lot of the cabs park themselves on the top floor because they expect people to be coming down. All of this can be optimized if you have a competent tech programming the controller, and it can get people around the building faster. If you have a building, please, if your building owners are in this room, if you have a building that like everyone bitches about the elevator, hire someone who knows what they're doing. You can make it a lot freaking better.
Give me 2 seconds to punch in a sim tower and we can figure it all out. But yeah, we're going to try to pick it up here a little bit, I think. But Sim Tower was originally an elevator simulator, like an actual technical simulator. It was meant to be a performance model. And Maxis got their hands on it and said, we should add some disasters. That's pretty popular.
Speaking of disasters, there is seismic mode or earthquake mode. That exists in certain elevators. They will trip if the elevator gets in trouble, if they actually feel the building shaking. And what he taught me is sometimes an elevator in seismic alert will go up, not down. Why would that?
When the building starts shaking, there's a risk that the counterweight of the cab can actually become free from the rail, shake especially hard. And if the counterweight becomes free and the motor starts driving you towards the swinging counterweight, well, it's just a wrecking ball. Just a 4,500 pound, whatever, however many pounds wrecking ball just swinging around. If it crashes into the car, you've got a pretty serious problem. So it is possible if you're in a situation where you're in an elevator during an earthquake, it could very well take you up, which is totally counterintuitive, but just get the hell up.
Yeah. Other times elevators might go up. It's not seismic unrest, but you like say civil unrest. Right.
Yeah. So riot mode basically just takes ground-connected levels out of the play. So, if somebody's, ransacking the building and they throw a brick through the glass and they're able to access the lobby, they're not going to be able to call the elevator. But the building's occupants can still use the elevator to move around internally. So the one place that I actually saw this was at a museum. So for whatever reason, they wanted to be able to move around. And they didn't want, if somebody happened to get through, they wanted to make sure that area was not accessible, but the other ones were still usable.
It's a pretty neat, these are all things that didn't exist long ago, but some customers said, can we do this? And people in the industry were like, I guess we could. Let's program that shit in. Just like Code Blue, hospital priority service. The idea of a doctor who's got a patient that has to go somewhere right away, oh my God, flip that key. It's like super absolute priority. Not even like executive and VIP mode. I think it'll level and then come back. This will literally take the nearest car, immediately switch its direction, and run at rated speed right back to the floor while making that announcement that says, elevator needed, please get out immediately. And then I think it even sits there with the doors open until the person with the key takes it and drives it. It gives you a super user type mode because you need that elevator to get a patient somewhere.
Between that and executive service, like we were talking about, is the automatic versus manual door control. Code Blue door controls manual. Executive mode, well, you don't need to have executives waste their time pushing buttons, right?
Yeah. So also in hospitals, Code Blue, there's also Code Pink. Code Pink is baby theft mode. If you're not familiar with security in hospitals, elevators can do what's called a type of security recall, where if somebody moves a child and they're not authorized to move that baby, doors will lock around the hospital and a pager goes off. But even elevators, you'll get stuck in an elevator. Or they'll take you to the security level and sit there and cycle the doors or keep the door shut like a man trap. So elevators have been leveraged into a lot of interesting security architectures in many, many ways. And over the years, people have come to depend on them because we've gotten rid of a lot of security staff. Because we said, well, no, the elevator will handle that. Nobody could do that. Nobody could get to that floor. But a lot of this gets undermined with the one feature that is super universal in almost every elevator. Fire mode. Yes, fire service mode.
Since the 1973 code, elevators are required to have some form of firefighter emergency operation. Back in '73, it was just recall. That's when the smoke detectors or the heat detectors went off somewhere near the elevator. You take the elevator out of service and bring it down to the lobby so that occupants could not use it. This came out of the fact that the buttons used to melt when the floor was on fire. Contacts would get shorted, and the elevator would stop at a floor that was on fire with the people inside it. So if you ever saw the Towering Inferno, yeah, it's real. Funny, but it happened several times. It happened in Chicago not that long ago on an elevator that wasn't even retrofit. So then what they started doing after recall, they said, well, what if we need to use the elevator during a fire? And then they added what's called phase 2. That's the actual true firefighter emergency operation. That's when a firefighter comes into the building, gets the key, turns it at the lobby, gets in the car, turns the key in the car, and then rides it wherever the fire is. Usually not to where the fire is. Usually it's 2 floors below where the fire is. But, depending on department policy. But yeah, most important part of firefighters' operation you need to know as far as security concerns is that all your security concerns go out the window during an emergency. It's in the code. It actually says that firefighters' emergency operation must override any lockouts that you put on a floor. So, sorry, you put investments into your elevator security, that completely fucks it up.
I'm not repeating that. Yes, Kerbop.
Then it has to stop at every floor.
The question is, do they have one key? We'll get to that. There's a whole section on that.
In a specific building, a building may only use one key, no matter how many elevators it has.
Yeah. Any given building will have one key. Some states have adopted their own key that's universal throughout the state. One state at least forced a super old key to be retrofitted everywhere. We got a whole section on the keys about elevators and shit. Like, oh yeah. There's a lot of interesting things relating to elevators and fires. So, I mean, I found this little key switch up in the Montana State House, and I'm like, what is, it's not really, it's like a toggle switch. What the heck is this thing? It looks like it's related to the fire. Should I touch it? Probably not. And I'm glad I didn't, because this is the smoke guard system. In an elevator system, like a hoistway is basically a giant chimney, and smoke and fire conditions can spread throughout a building very rapidly. But smoke guard and systems like it will drop a shield in front of the hoistway doors to prevent smoke and hot air from traveling around the building when you don't want it to in a disaster.
This is a little unusual too, because most modern elevators that are concerned with this will just have louvers and a damper at the top of the hoistway, so it'll either open or close depending on whatever the fire suppression system decides is right. So I hadn't actually heard of this until David showed it to me.
But you have situations where, like, ask us during the Q&A or ask us in the bar later. There might be situations where you've seen, these are two different elevators in the same building. This is a regular passenger elevator and a service elevator. Now, one of them happens to have all your traditional fire keys, including this red halo around the fire service switch. This one over here does not appear to have that, right? But if you look off to the side, it was a retrofit. It was a secondary mod. So you'll see as code changes, and Howerd can walk into elevators and be like, oh, well, this switch is here, that's the, look at this, they're running on the 83 code. Or they've got the 90, they've adopted the 96 code in this building. So there's a lot of differences in code based on what you're going to see and how the elevator might behave, but they're all supposed to be following these rules. Which is why we were really surprised when we saw an elevator really close to where we are, right?
This is like, it's so weird. It's identical to the ones that are here. And this is, okay, let's just tell. This is the pool elevator, okay? And for some reason, they don't actually have a fire service key switch, right? What it kind of came down to is that it must have been built to 80, pretty much 83 code, which is what I said to him when I saw this. That they basically implemented it so that there's only one elevator in the bank, okay? If there's a fire, it's gonna go on emergency recall. So that's the Joule, the fire service Joule. It's gonna light up and say, hey, the building's on fire, I'm going back to the lobby. Call cancel is used on phase 2, but how do you get to phase 2? There's the key switch in the lobby. So unlike a modern elevator where they have to turn 2 key switches when they get here, for some reason they just set it up so that, well, you turn the key in the lobby, the car's probably gonna go straight to phase 2. But, please don't try that here.
Yeah, it's elevator Obscura. There's some real obscure shit in this industry, man. By the way, who could possibly have more control over an elevator than a fire responder? Who is more important to an elevator than a fire personnel? Elevator personnel, right, exactly. The most powerful mode in pretty much any system is hoistway inspection mode. If you are in the hoistway, you are God at that point.
Inspection overrides fire service, but there's a pretty sensible reason for that when you think about it. If there's a guy in the car top and you start moving the car unexpectedly and he's working on something, you could create a serious problem. Not just, for the fact that...
Yeah.
So basically, and the other thing is too, if I was on a car top and there's a little indicator that'll actually say, hey, the car wants to be on fire service, but it's not, I'm getting the hell out of there. I'll be the first one out of that building.
So in general though, the hoistway is a not safe place to be if you do not know what you're doing. There are a lot of controls in the hoistway that you don't know what they do exactly if you haven't been trained. There's a lot of circuitry and equipment on car tops that you can be interfering with if you step on the wrong thing or trip over something. There's a lot of shit going on in there. You don't need to be on the car top unless you've been trained to be on a car top.
There are even roping configurations where there's moving rope shivs on top of the cars. If it's rope 2 to 1, you're actually going to have a traction shiv with the ropes moving and the traction shiv moving on top of the car. Very little place to stand, very little place to put equipment or any tools or anything like that. Super duper dangerous. So, for whatever it's worth, I mean, you have to know what you're getting into here.
And it's sometimes hard to know what you're getting into because if you're not in the industry, things in the industry won't make sense to you. Take it away on how this works.
Oh, it's not that complicated, right? You want to shut down the elevator, you do what anyone would think you'd do. You turn the key to on.
Because you have to turn shutdown mode on. And shutdown is shutdown to be running.
Sometimes you'll actually see the shutdown switch will be labeled MG. So if you ever see that, it's a motor generator, it's not a DC powered car. But the hoist motor is using DC. And there's an actual phase converting motor generator set that's converting the AC into DC. So if you're turning the MG off, you're effectively turning the elevator off.
So just because you think you've read something on the internet you might not be an expert, right? We all know how to internet really hard in this building, but don't jump around on the car top, don't screw around on the hoistway if you haven't learned it from an actual expert. That said, would you like to see a whole lot of stuff very quickly about elevator security and how it can be subverted? Okay. We do have a lot of material. We were a little late because y'all were trickling in a little slow. We're going to go as fast as we can, and we're going to get through as much as we can, and maybe slide. And we'll give you a bingo notch if we slide a few minutes late into Hacker Trivia. So, disabling the hall call buttons.
Right. Everybody thinks this is a great idea. It's really popular in schools, like high school, middle schools, where kids are, old enough to know they can kind of cause trouble pushing the buttons, and they would just do it to create a nuisance. So a lot of times you'll see something like this. In the case of the one that's actually on the left, it's a situation where you have to actually have the key to register the call. In the one that's on the right, you can just toggle it. Do I want to allow people to be able to register calls or not?
Or maybe there's no hall call buttons at all. Right. Maybe you just need a key to go up or down and register a call that way, right?
Right.
How many of you have been in a situation where the actual button isn't a button, but you need to register, you could latch a call with a credential of some kind, like a room key, for example. Have you seen that? Maybe like here on floor 6? Exactly. So these are all ways of trying to restrict travel around a building. Being able to say certain buttons are just locked out with these cutout key switches, right?
Right. And the reason you can't actually just have a key switch in the cab, again, is for firefighters' operation. If the firefighter had no button to push, they're not getting to that floor, and that can create a situation. So code requires there to be a button, and you can have a lockout, but they can't interact with each other in such a way that it would override firefighters' operation.
So all of these systems, all these credentials that say, oh, you need a badge, you can't go at this hour of the day, all of these systems are able to be subverted in one way or another. And we like to joke that the only real secure solution to this kind of stuff is like physically securing the elevator. And by that I mean this, you see this big lock next to the buttons. Howard will tell you it wasn't locking the button, right?
This is real shit.
Yeah.
This is from a detention facility, and this is how they secured their elevator. This actually was a variance that was granted to them. This is not permitted by code. But they received a variance from the local, building department, given the circumstances, and said, okay, we understand you have special security considerations. Go ahead and put that there. That, of course, is from an accident site. So I'll let you use your imagination as to what happened, but, experience, hit us up at the bar.
But in general, if you don't have a cage around your elevator, think of your elevator like an open stairwell. What would you do with a big open stairwell in an office building to be secure? You would vestibule it off, right? Elevators should be in a little vestibule situation on secure floors. Otherwise, in my opinion, they are not really that secure. Would you like to see us take a big dump over most of the security we just showed you? Yeah. All right. So remember those like, oh, I can't register a floor call because I need a key. I can't get the elevator. Well, here's something.
Envelope packs.
So what happened there? Like, they tripped the scanner edge. Yeah. The elevator happened to be platformed at that floor, so they just slipped something through the doors and tripped the scanner edge.
Not a universal trick. A lot of times that input is disabled once the doors have reached a fully closed position. I've always wondered what type of controller that was that worked on it, but hey, it's always interesting to know that it works somewhere. So.
How about you're in a building where you can't get to, like, let's say the top floor if you don't have the right credential?
Again, uncanny resemblance.
Yeah, this was a Hilton property in Pennsylvania, I think, right? Yeah. So what if you want to get up there and you don't have a key, right? Here's what you do, and this is something, you can take this one home. You can try this yourself. It does not break anything.
You're not going to kill yourself, and that's why I'm really happy to share this one with you.
The answer is keep registering up calls to get as high as you can. And from the top floor, keep registering up calls to bring elevators up. If there's no one in that elevator, send it down manually, because then the next up call you register is going to call a different elevator and a different elevator. And eventually, you should be able to catch an elevator with some credentialed person who's just going up. It's going to stop for you. And you're just tailgating.
Right. So elevator dispatching. A modern elevator is called collective selective dispatching. That means it's going to collect all the calls, and selective as in like select. I don't know what that was. So collective selective, it's going to keep going in the direction it's traveling until it has a reason to reverse direction. So in this case,
Going up?
Yep. We're going up. He was going up.
Thank you.
He's like, you guys going up? Yes, we are, Mr. Hotel Stairs.
Wait, always have your door set.
Can you guys hear Howard over the mic pretty well or no? All right. I mean, it's not like we're dropping major O-Day on this one right here, but
No, but this is a great, like, you know, just basic, skill-less type of, you know, escalation of privilege here, right?
so the idea of, you know, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm on the top floor, that took no equipment, that took no credentials, that took, you know, there's like the super lounge, there's everything else. Now, many buildings, as you know from being pen testers, if you check other doors in the facility, like I'm not saying the elevator is the only way to do this. You might have a door like maybe something like this out here, and you say, okay.
So you can have a cigarette up here on the top floor, the 6th floor.
Sure.
But I'm going to go ahead and go back inside. See you later. See ya.
That was totally in South Nebraska. Yeah. But what do you need if you want to trigger, you know, actual other operation of these special features? Far and away, you're talking key switches. Key switches trigger everything. And knowing how to find which key for which switch, like you can see, this industry had a little graffiti, you know, elevator guys love their graffiti. So which switch is which? Most elevator folk don't track this kind of stuff. They just say, oh, I know I need these keys for these, you know, this elevator, this building. If you show up for an inspection, you just ask for them at the desk, or you get them in the box if you're a first responder. This man is a little bit more touched in the head, and he has been collecting a database of these keys throughout his entire career. This man has a collection of keys that are very impressive at this point, and he knows what every last fucking one of these do.
But it got so big, I had to stop using this plastic thing. It just goes in a box now.
So every last one of these is a manufacturer-specific key, meaning it comes from the factory that way. Every one of these brands of fixtures, and there are elevator brands and fixture brands, right? Because there's aftermarket parts.
Yeah, and craft elevators for small shops. They'll just buy, you know, non-proprietary fixtures, but an elevator.
But Howerd can walk into an elevator and spot just by looking. I'll text him on jobs. I'm like, oh my God, dude, I'm in this. What key do I need? He's like, you know this. Come on, recognize the buttons. What font is that? I'm like, oh my God, security is coming around the corner. What is this? He's like, it's EPCO. It's always EPCO. Like,
It's Helvetica, man.
yeah. So understanding that having the right set of keys will get you in a lot of situations.
But for the most part, not the crap that you can actually buy. Because for some reason, vendors that specialize in either security stuff or fire products or frankly, just elevator products as well, have made their own key sets. There's no consistency. A lot of times they're inaccurate. A lot of times they're cut wrong. Or in the case of this one, which by the way, really awesome of them to take pictures straight on facing those keys, right? Yeah. So not only did they do us that great favor, but they also put together the perfect set if your fire truck rolls through all 7 of those states simultaneously, because there's no fucking pattern here. They just decided, hey, this is a key for somewhere, so put it on there and sell it.
Yeah, the kind of sets you can usually buy online, this is an industry with a lot of misinformation going on. You can search for these keys, you can try to buy an elevator key, you will often not know exactly what you're getting unless you're in the industry itself. Now, the industry itself, when people like to say, well, man, I've heard this industry is really modernizing. Like, what about those cutting edge systems, those destination dispatch? Like, I've seen those in new hotels. What do first responders need? Buttons to every floor. They are in the cab somewhere. They're hidden behind a panel, but they're still there. Fire service is still there. Emergency operation is still there. Forget about being elite in the future. This is an industry that is way still in the past. The industry has tried to modernize and done it really badly. This is remote monitoring through like LiftNet is a very popular package.
Anybody recognize that title bar?
Yeah.
What operating system is this running on? Sure is.
Yeah. These are all supposed to be remote management controls. These are screenshots of the actual app. This is screenshotting from the actual user manual that's publicly available online from LiftNet. This is this is like the login password. Now, don't worry, that's okay. They have a super admin.
The admin
mode, right?
password is different.
That's also in the same manual online. MCE elevator controls, like they have a separate, remote admin tool. This is their user manual. They're like, make sure you open up, a special account. Just make sure it's set to MCE support. You know what? Go ahead and change your router password to MCE support. Like, just make everything MCE support. in case we need to get in, so that we can get to this box remotely.
I have to just say, honestly, MCE makes great elevator products, but they don't necessarily have the most secure elevator products. So with that being said, if I came to a job, I saw an MCE controller, I'm not thinking, oh, this is a shitty job. But then I see that, and I start to wonder about what's going on there, the XP screen. But I did ask about it, and they did tell me, no, it's cool. We got extended support.
But so imagine this being remote accessible this might be on your network right now, for all you know, depending on what elevator systems you have. By the way, we beg forgiveness, and Mark, we need like another 15, 20 minutes tops. Is that okay? Are you guys okay with that? All right, we want to show you all the new stuff too. So the biggie, like you asked earlier, is there like a universal elevator key? There is. It was defined in code. What code did they actually ultimately come out? This is the 2007
This is
code.
the 2007, yeah.
They defined the FEOK1, which was going to be like the super granddaddy, beat all others, firefighters service mode key. So of course, when they published the code document, asked me put the direct bidding code in the document for this key. Like that belongs there. Yeah. Like look at that, that's actually a thing, man. And it's been that way for a while.
Well, it gets worse. So most code is not retroactive. So this would not apply if your elevator was built to a code prior to the 2007 code. But the state of Vermont said, no, fuck that. We're retroactively going to require people to install the FEOK1 switch. So if you're a building owner in Vermont, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you just bought some shitty key switches.
Yeah. Every elevator in Vermont, FEOK1. But what do pen testers do? How do we leverage this stuff? Well, you should already make enough sense. If we have the right keys on a job, we are just going to slide around a building in ways they didn't expect. There was a job that we had where the front desk was the guard, but there was an elevator in the back of the house. Now, you weren't supposed to be able, without credentials, to take this elevator up. You could get, like from the parking deck, you could get to it. But what did we do? Well, you'll see the video of us on the left. You'll see the video they actually pulled from the surveillance on the right, because they didn't believe it when we tried to explain this. We said, all right, well, your back door could be locked a little better. That's one thing. And then we were able to call this elevator. And again, we shouldn't be able to drive it upstairs, right? But we said, look on camera and see how fast we were able to do this.
Phase 1, phase 2.
Boom. That was all we needed to flip the elevator to fire service mode and drive it up to the next floor. And because of the culture of this building, once we popped out on the main level, everyone just assumed you must have come through, the lobby. So yeah, of course you belong up here, right? I mean, you have this little white badge that doesn't say anything at all on it, but sure enough, you're in the building now. And that's all it took. It took like 2 seconds at the switches to be able to change modes in this elevator and get in there.
Getting back to the disclaimers, though, it's worth pointing out that elevator resulted, the elevator ultimately was very unhappy with how quickly we were throwing the key switches on and off, and it did fault out. And there was a reset procedure that was required.
Yeah, we had to control delete the
probably most people in this room would not have been capable of, yeah.
Yeah. So that idea of going in the back door, just going up the elevator, that was something that blew the mind of this building owner because they didn't think that would be possible. They're like, no, you need credentials. We're like, dude, we have the keys, son. Like, the key is the key. Speaking of keys, how many people saw this article in the New York Post about the guy selling the fire keys? Exactly. And I love that the Post said, it's okay. We checked with locksmiths who said it's okay to print these photos because no one could ever make duplicates of these keys. And they were like chewing out this guy, making him out to be worse than Hitler. He was just some retired locksmith selling these keys without really caring who he was selling them to.
Well, he knew what he was doing, but he just didn't,
Yeah, he didn't care. But let me just tell you, here's a much better resolution photo of that key, by the way. And you'll see why this is not a major security breach. This is the famous 2642 key. It's the New York City key for all fire code in New York. The bidding code is 26420. Like, it's not crazy that that's actually, in fact, they don't use the first bidding cut, so it's really just that. So it's not like he was selling this amazing top secret key that no one knew what it was. It's the name of the key. And we even had friends of ours just carving it on an Abbas blank. Yes. How do they protect themselves from that?
It really comes down to it. If you're in a situation where there's a regional key required, you're gonna have to convince your local code official that you need a variance. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck fighting City Hall.
Now, there is actually something in that section of the code that allows like a UL 1037 rated anti-theft device to be used as a key box for certain situations. Anyway, I'm trying to think of the language. I think it's like if it's impractical, technically impossible, or like something else, or like, it's technically, financially impossible, like, some combination of those words. And you can get a variance based on the code if you can justify it. Or you can just be close to your code official and say, hey, we got to secure the code. You got to be able to do something.
Slide a case of beer.
I'll work with your fire department, but you can't do this. But that's an uphill battle, and that's unfortunately what the code has kind of shoved down people's throats now. So yeah, if you're taking something away from it, we're not telling you to get on a car top so much as we are saying, can we talk about how shitty this code is with regards to security? Because nobody's talking about it besides us. So
Yeah. There's not just like a citywide key. This is a key that applies to 4 fucking states. The 3502 key, which again is an unrestricted key blank. It's a Yale 2, and you can totally see the bitting codes just by looking at the goddamn thing. There's this one that applies to the entire state of Tennessee. This is a hilarious story when you tried to order it, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to copy this. And so, I found out you could buy, various pieces of equipment that come with keys and without keys. I ordered a Tennessee key box, and I got it. Got a key. That didn't work. So I called up and I was like, well, can I get the Gamewell key box? And they're like, yeah, sure. So they sent it to me, and it comes with keys. And so I call them up and I say, why didn't you send it to me with the Tennessee box? And they go, well, because that's got the Tennessee key.
It's the same key. You just can't call. It's like you can't walk in a head shop and say, I need to buy this bowl. But you're like, I would like this glass pipe, sir. And they're like, of course, wink, wink. So you can buy all the Gamewell Christmas tree keys you want. You just can't buy the Tennessee key. I know, this is real. Like, we're not making this up. Indiana uses a key box. It's a tubular key. You guys know how hard that is to pick. You were doing it in the village. But again, you can order the box. You just can't order the key.
Right.
But how many of you have ever worked with a tubular lock, right? How many of you have ever used a tubular pick? Right, some of you were doing it today. They come with that little key gauge, and then if you get a tubular key cutter, you can just make your own, and there you go. We just cut our own Indiana key that opens up all the Indiana state key boxes. There's the Indiana key code right there. That's another whole statewide key. There's a number of states that have moved to Medico, like Kentucky. We got some fans of bourbon and DerbyCon in this room, I imagine. Kentucky uses a Medico classic style cam lock, but you can order the box. You can't order the key, you can order the key box. And as anyone knows, if it ships open, which it does, so you can mount the thing on your wall, you can take apart the cam lock. If you take the cam off and pull a plug out, you can then just take it apart very carefully by decapping it in your room at like DEF CON. And you say, okay, let's dump all these little pins out of here. Let's get that and put it on a nice pinning tray with our Medico pinning measurements. There we are, there's our cam. Let's look in Instacode for the codes. All right, we wrote that down. Let's put it back together and put the top plate back on it and reinstall it and return it. We're like, this did not meet our box of full needs, thank you. There's the Medico key for all the freaking state of Kentucky right there. That works. Florida loves Medico for everything. You can order the Florida key boxes and the Florida key switches. Florida Zone 4. Let's take that sucker apart. Oh, it's an M3. It's not like it's